Section 2.2.25-T, homework. A researcher wanted to determine the number of televisions in households. He conducts a survey of 40 randomly selected households and obtains the data in the accompanying table. We're going to complete parts A through H below. And then here is the television, or the table of television counts. So let's take a look at the first question. It says, are these data discrete or continuous? Okay, well, here's our question, here's our table. So now let's recall what a discrete variable is and a continuous variable. A discrete variable is a quantitative variable that has either a finite number of possible values or a countable number of possible values. A continuous variable may take on every possible value between any two values. Since each household can only have a whole number of televisions, we would say that the data are discrete. So let's answer our question. So the given data are discrete because they can only have whole number values. So therefore, there is our answer for the first part. Okay, the next question is asking us to construct a frequency distribution of the data. Since this has a T next to the question, that means we want to be able to use technology for this question. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to open this up into StatCrunch. So over here, we're going to click on the icon, and then in the top right, we're going to click on that and then open the data up into StatCrunch. Okay, and so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to then generate a frequency distribution. And so up at the top, you see where it says variable 1. We can change that and type in televisions just so that it can give us, the same information that we have over here. Okay, and so what we want to do is we're going to go to Stat, and then we're going to go to Tables, and then we're going to select Frequency. So we're going to select the column that says Televisions, and then we're going to go ahead and then select Frequency. Okay, and therefore we're then just going to go ahead and select Compute. And so we can see here that we get the following table. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this table into my sheet. Okay, my existing sheet for where my question was, and you can see what we get. Okay, we have our frequency. So what do we have? We can see that we get the value of 1, 12 for 1, and then 16 for 2 televisions, 8 for 3 televisions, 2 for 4 televisions, and then 1. So let's go ahead and put our answer in. Okay, so again, we had the following. So we have 1, 12, 16. So there's 1, 12, and then 16. And then we had 8, 2, and then 1. So we have 8, 2, and then 1. Let's check our answer, and there is our result. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to construct a relative frequency distribution of the data. So let's take a look here. Okay, well, remember that the frequency distribution lists each category of the data and the number of occurrences for each category of data, which we did in Part B. For Part C, to construct a relative frequency distribution, it is the proportion or percent of observations within a category. It can be found by dividing the frequency by the sum of all the frequencies. So let's open up StatCrunch again. So one way of being able to do this is we want to find a relative frequency. So what we can do is select Options and then go to Edit. Okay, and now what we want to do is instead of finding the frequency, we want to select the relative frequency. And then we're going to select Compute. So let's go ahead and copy this table, okay, into our data set. Okay, so you can see what we get for the 0. So for 0, we have 0.025, 0.3 for 1, 0.4, 0.2, 0.05, and 0.025. So let's go ahead and then put our results into our question. So 0.025 and 0.3. Okay, and then we have 0.4 and 0.2. Okay, and then the last two, 0.05 and 0.025. Okay, and there is our result. Now it says, what percentage of households in the survey have 3 televisions? And so we're looking for a percentage. So in this case here, okay, it says, what percentage of households have 3 televisions? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So 3 televisions, there's our 3, and there is our relative frequency, which is 0.2. And we want to convert that into a decimal, so 0.2, we're going to add a 0 here and then multiply that by 100%. Move that over twice, gives us 20%. So that means it's going to be 20% of households that have 3 televisions. So let's put in our answer. There is 20, and then there is our result. Okay, the next question says, what percentage of households in the survey have 4 or more televisions? So 4 or more, let's go ahead and look at our result here. So we want to be able to find 4 or more. So I'm just going to use this other one here. So 4 or more, there's 4 and there's 5. So it's those 2 right there. So what we want to do is we want to be able to add them together and then convert it into a decimal. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, okay, our values here. So we have 0.025, we want to line up the decimals, and 0.05, and then add a 0 there. So when we add these together, we're going to get 0.075. And now we want to convert that into a decimal, a percent. So we're going to multiply it by 100%. So we're going to move this decimal over twice. And so therefore, when we multiply that, we're going to get 7.5%. So therefore, this is going to be 7.5%. So let's go ahead and put that value in here. So here is 7.5. Check our answer, and there is our result. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to be able to construct a frequency histogram of the data and then choose the correct graph below. So let's go ahead and do this on StatCrunch. Okay, so here we already have our frequency table, so we can go ahead and move that over. Now what we want to do is we want to create a frequency histogram. So I'm going to select graph and then go down to histogram, and then I'm going to select televisions. Okay, now down here this is optional, okay, but here we want the frequency, right, because you want a frequency histogram. We're going to start at 0 because that's where it's located here. We have a 0. So I'm going to put it start at 0. And then I'm just going to put in a bin width of 1. It doesn't mean that, it's just giving me, I want to get something that's pretty close to what this looks like in my result. So when I select compute, it's going to give me a histogram. Now, if you notice here, the 0 and the 1 and so forth are in the middle of the bar. But in this case here, it's not. But still, it's given us the shape of what we want. Okay, now, there's a couple ways of looking at this. I'm going to go back and look at the frequency table. Now, if you notice here, at the 0, we start low, and then at 1 and 2, we go high, and then 3, it's a little lower, and then it tapers down again from 4 and 5. So we don't necessarily need to make a histogram, but making a histogram is going to allow us to be able to see what's going on. So in this case here we're starting out here low, right? And then we go up, up, and then low again and over here. So it looks like it could be option B. But let's take a look at our graph. Our graph resembles B. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and select B. And then check our result. Okay. Now it says to construct a relative frequency histogram of the data. So now the relative frequency histogram should look pretty much the same as the frequency histogram. So if we wanted to, the only thing that's different is that the y-axis is now going to be in decimal form because that represents the proportion. And so all we need to do is come in here and select options and select edit. And instead of doing the type of frequency, we can just go ahead and select relative frequency. And then everything else is pretty much already in there. So we're going to select compute, and then we're going to get sort of the same look as we did here for B as well. So it looks like B, again, represents our relative frequency. So we're going to select B, and then there's our answer. Okay, now the next question says, describe the shape of the distribution. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and then copy our graph, okay, into the page that we were working on. Okay, so here is our graph. I'm just going to bring it down here a little further. Okay, so if you notice, when we look at our graph, what we want to do is we want to trace this graph. So it starts out, okay, pretty high, right? And then all of a sudden it's going to taper down, and then it's going to have a tail here to the right. So there's a longer tail on the right-hand side. So therefore, if it's a longer tail on the right-hand side, then we're going to answer the following question. We would say that the distribution is skewed right.